Hello, and welcome to the Alchemist Inkwell.
This is your spiritual podcast for grounded people.
I'm Emily.
I'm KristaLyn, and
I'm Rebecca, and it was so hard for me not to say that with you as you were saying it, but I knew it wouldn't line up.
goes at the beginning and the end of these things, so it's totally fine. We are perfectly on this podcast. Oh man,
All like washed out. I was like, wait a second, I can barely see my face. So if you can barely see my face, I don't know what's going on. I'll do this.
great. Oh, listening to this, Em looks great.
Just looked like a ghost myself. Oh, now we're better. We're focused. We were talking about, we did the sacred spaces. We did the thing. And
so focused.
And we thought it would be really fun to just kind of do a recap. Obviously, if you were there, we hope this is fun for you too. But if you were not there, we hope that it's like inspiring and connective and like give some of that energy that we really deeply crafted and were immersed in this weekend and like provides it to you as a listener just to have to use as well. Because I mean, it was big energy.
It was so much energy. I remember we were in the kitchen as sort of a green room for part of it. And during, I think, especially after your talk, Em, which is no surprise, the level of theta was thick. Everybody was in that theta brain wave, and you could feel it all across your head. And it was amazing, especially after the activation where you broke the phasma box.
Yeah, do you want to talk about that, Em? About how you managed to break the phasma box?
Sure. So real quick, just for our listeners, we mentioned this on previous podcasts, but I just want to describe it in a little bit more detail. So, because of honestly Catherine's amazing background in paranormal investigation, we had some like spiritual tools going. And at one point, even Catherine's S box went off in her backpack, which was wild and like it was not turned on. And all of a sudden it was like, too bad, it's turned on now. And it communicated with us as well. But for all of the talks that we did, we had something called the Phasma box going. Rebecca, do you want to talk a little bit more about what the Phasma box is? Like, you have more experience with it than us.
Yeah, so what I love about it first is it's very affordable. It's about $20 and it's an app that works specifically with PC computers. And the really unique thing about Phasmabox is, unlike a lot of other paranormal investigative tech out there, Phasmabox can actually pick up on different frequencies of spirits. So
Mhm.
not only can it pick up on ghosts, now granted, ghosts tend to come through the strongest, but it also can pick up on past loved ones, on guides, even deities can sometimes show up as different forms. So oftentimes I hear music when deities are trying to get through. So it's a really cool piece of equipment, and compared to most other equipment out there, highly, highly affordable, which is also making it more easier for a lot of people to utilize, and it makes it more accessible. That's the word I was thinking of.
Yeah. Dragons came through on it. Just throw that out there. We played with it a little bit, like not during the conference, and we were trying to get Apollo to come through on it, and he was struggling with it, and he's very pissed off, and he demanded that I get it as soon as I get home. So I'm going to get it today because he was like, I'm gonna figure it the fuck out. Like he was very mad, but Boris was totally content. We put him through the Phasma box. Regardless, so it's like a really cool program. So we had that running and recording during all of the talks that we gave. And anyone who purchases an online ticket or did purchase an online ticket will, get the recordings of that. Or if you were there, you'll get the recordings of that. Basically, we got it all set up and going, and then we were like, we're gonna do our opening stuff. And the way that we went through and we shielded technology. Now, for the technology that was hosting the Zoom, went over there and basically like did a don't fucking touch the Zoom sort of shield over it, which was essentially the gist of the energy and intention that I wove into that shield. And Rebecca, you did the Phasma box one, which was more for like, hey, only spirits that are with the conference can talk through this. Like, if you don't belong here, like, don't, right?
Yeah, and it was also because the location we had was just so wonderful because it allowed people to do various reads on historical artifacts that were in the exhibition halls nearby, and they all got tickets to be able to do that. And because we had already walked through there and we were already picking up vibes, I had a feeling that if there weren't something around the Phasma box, we would get feedback from all over the place. I know, having used Phasma box out here in Wilmington, sometimes you will pick up folks from 3 to 5 houses away. So basically what I did, and I do this on my own paranormal investigations, I went up to the computer, I made a ring, and I just informed everything around. I'm like, all right, if you want to come in, it's really got to work 1 at a time, or 2 if you really want to shove at each other. The thing is though, I I learned from this experience because I specifically made a ring. And PS, it was super validating. I believe, Emily, you're the one, you walked up to the ring and you're like, "Oh, I can feel it." I was like, "Great." Um, I'd only made it specifically for that intention of allowing spirits to mainly go 1 at a time, move in and out, and then like say their piece and go. I did not make any kind of shielding for what the activation ended up doing.
Yeah. So if you've ever gotten a chance to experience one of my activations, that's like one of my like secret hidden special skills that I do spiritually, because it's everything I'm describing that I walk you through doing with the activation is like 30% of what I'm energetically actually doing while I'm talking. So it's a lot of energy work and manipulation and pulling in energy from creator and all sorts of stuff. And it changes like the spiritual barometric pressure of the room pretty significantly in the past, and we've talked about it on the podcast. I called in a thunderstorm. Like just happens with it. And so this time we went to do like the opening activation about like opening your energy, whatever. And apparently the Phasma box and the computer completely just flipped. Like it totally shut off and shut down completely the activation. My bad.
Which is amazing. Like, you want to talk about validation. Like, I of course felt it. I know everybody in the room, I'm certain, felt like the vibration changing and all of that activation happening. And then for the tech to also feel it, like that's exactly what we want in paranormal investigations. We want the tech to pick it up. It just so happened I've never seen that happen before, where like everything shut down. I was like, well, this is really cool. I'm glad we have a break between the next speaking series so that there's time to reboot it.
Right? And I'm interested to see because the next speaker was actually me. And I don't know anything that came of my Phasma box recording yet. I haven't heard anything of that. We got other cool things that we already know of on Phasma, which we can talk about that too on here. Because there was really cool things that happened with the Phasma that we already know of, but like we're still working through the recording. Blah, can't talk. And so I'm interested to see if it like took a while to pick stuff up again, or if it was like loud immediately. It will be
I
intriguing.
do believe I know, of course, somebody, and I love this too, either a guide or somebody at some point, I believe I was told, they said hi Hermes. And I want to say that Apollo was also mentioned as well, though I'm not entirely sure when. It might have been during your presentation. Though, if anything, I think another cool thing was for the speakers how our guides showed up and our deities that we work with and that kind of thing, because we asked them. I mean, I was straight up like, hey, I'm about to do this thing and I feel like it'd be really cool if you'd hang out. You don't have to ask Hermes twice. And just like the validation that we got, not only from the equipment and different guides validating that through the equipment, but also I was talking to people who attended who also work with these deities or have folks who can tell them who the deities are or check themselves and that kind of thing. And it was just like so validating all around to be like, cool, we have gods that care enough to come here and like hang out with us.
Right? It was yeah, it was really valid. And I think, and I mean, I think we can all speak to that, but a lot of the people who came were like, hey, was there ghosts in the back corner of the room? Because it felt like there were people just sitting there watching us. Or like, hey, when you were speaking, there was this thing on the stage, or this kind of happened. And everyone, once one person said it, someone else like across the room would be like, I saw that too. And even if they didn't know each other, there was just this really, which is the whole reason we designed this dang conference gathering, is so that people can validate each other. And I really think that happened on like a very grand scale, which was so cool.
I think
Agreed.
too.
I was looking at,
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
I was some of the pictures that our amazing photographer and videographer uploaded. And just seeing how many people were sitting next to each other that like I kind of recognized from consultations or Forgotten Storytellers or Greece or whatever, and how I'm not aware that they knew each other beforehand. And like day 2, more people were sitting closer together to each other was really, really cool.
Well, we even caught
Sorry.
some cool. I'm sorry. We'll just talk over each other a whole bunch.
So many people found one another in this con. Like it was just such a cool thing. Some people, they came because they knew one of us or one of the speakers or one of the readers or the vendors, and people just naturally gravitated to one another. Like there was so many people who I wanted to meet, as in like have them meet each other, and they just did. And I think that also goes to show us not wanting to do a huge con. Like we capped it total 150. That shows how that community can work. And I think that was like super, super special. If people came looking to make friends, so many of them did. Some of them found each other on the VIP scavenger hunt and just like kept doing the rest of the hunt together. Some people found each other in different areas of the museum, and they were like, hey, there's this thing over here. I'm kind of feeling this. What do you feel about that? And so it just turned into more and more community and cross validation and just empowerment throughout, which was such a cool thing to witness.
I agree. I will also say, and this is just a testament that I hope everyone takes with them, but this was one of the easiest events that I think I've ever done. And that sounds, I know any event planner out there is like, excuse me? Like, what do you mean? We booked this museum truly sight unseen. We just saw like two photos online. We're like, sure. And it was the first venue that got back to us, that gave us everything we needed. They were incredibly communicative, and they had their tech was well done. Their presentation of everything was well done. Everything was handled. They were so lovely to work with. Not to mention, it was the history museum, so people could actually go through, like Rebecca said, and like do reads and tap into things because we had created that space, which was just phenomenally cool. But also things like the VIP mixer was done at a place called Reveler. Shout out, because I dubbed it immediately. I walked in, I was like, oh my God, this is a chaos bar, but in like the best possible way. Like it truly felt like you stepped into a different, like I tattooed fake skin at a bar. Like that was really cool, you know? But it just fell into our lap. It just totally worked. Everyone loved it. It was exactly what was needed in that moment. And then also the way that people had flexibility with everything worked totally well. Our volunteers were phenomenal and just so wonderful. And they helped everybody, and everyone had this like just beautiful, easy sense of it was not hard to come to the event. It was not hard to run the event. It was not hard to leave the event. I mean, might have been kind of hard to leave the event. I miss you both so much already. But still, it was like even that little bit of energy, I feel like that is a statement of when something is aligned. It's supposed to feel that way. It's not without challenge. It's just once you commit to it, it opens in a way that you don't expect. It was cool. Also, shout out to Reveler. If you're ever in Richmond, you should totally go because it was really neat. There was like a sand drawing table like in America's Got Talent, where they like make the pictures out of the sand and it tells like a whole story. We were not that coordinated, but it was a thing that existed. We tattooed fake skin. There was like a wish tree. It was so cool.
It's a great bar for people who are looking for something else to do rather than just talk. I think for neurodivergence in particular, like instead of having to feel like you have to be near the food or you have to be drinking a drink, you can just go into a side room and just play. And
Mhm.
the funny thing with Reveler, a friend of mine who I knew from the room escape industry years ago when I was in the room escape industry, we had looked at different coffee shops and that sort of thing to see if we could rent out a space with them on that time, and we kept getting no's, or we kept getting like nobody would respond to us. That friend of mine, I saw him on Facebook and I was like, wait, he's in Richmond. Wait, what does he do now? And then I found this bar and they were just wonderful to work with as well. And as once again, everything fell into place. And I think it's because we, over years of experience, have stopped fighting the process and started to, I'm going to say, flow with the process. If something is meant to happen, it has this kind of flow to it. And that was something that just kept coming up more and more.
Yeah, it's, and we brought it up in the conversation at Sacred Spaces, especially when we opened the whole gathering, but it's like we started to agree with the process rather than telling the process what it should be. We were just like, the process, we know what the outcome is, where people get this feeling. And we were just open to, where does that happen? How does that happen? What events make that happen? And they came to us, which was like lessons in manifesting and patience and receiving, which I loved.
Mhm. I agree with that. I will also say too, with that flow, we even had things that if we weren't flowing with it so well, would have thrown us off massive. Like we had some like a speaker back out 2 days before, like it was like right then, and we were like, okay, we'll do it like you said, and that ended up being the activation that shut down the Phasma box. Like that ended up being something else that was exactly what was needed. And on top of that, just again as divine timing, the way that we planned out the speakers was intentional, of course, but it wasn't like the way that it ended up working out was so incredibly perfect. Like the first day, we had their welcome talk, and then we had three speakers, and then we had the break, and then we did the vendor fair and the workshops, and then the speed read event. All of that worked super well. It was a very learning heavy day. It was a lot of like not intense energy, but it was stuff like you needed to absorb some stuff that day, which I think everyone did and embraced pretty significantly. And then the second day, it started with Rebecca, who did an amazing reclaiming mediumship talk that like totally lit up the room. And then we had like movement events, and it was so fun. Like we did a panel which was just fun and questions and a lot of interaction, and then we had Annette come do her goddess situation, which made everybody cry in a good way and dance sexy. It was awesome. um well, most people dance sexy.
But for themselves, I think that's an important
So
indication to make, to say it's not about going up to somebody or proving how you can dance sexy. Like the
mm-mm.
part of it, and for anybody who watched the live or the live recording that I did with Sister Goddess Annette, as I know her, we talk about that. It's not about being there for somebody else. You can have support from other people, but it's really about just being in the moment, connecting with your root chakra in particular, connecting with passion. And that will look different for different people depending on where they're at. But it's not about the sexy for anybody else. It is about the sexy for oneself and reconnecting to that area of themselves, whatever that means for each individual.
Yeah, which was cool. Like people from the audience had to volunteer and be vulnerable, and that set the stage. It was just a really neat. And then we had the sound healing to kind of close it out, which again, everybody cried at. Um, but in also a good way of like all this stuff that needed to be released ended up happening. And we didn't really know how exactly it was going to flow. It was just kind of like a, yeah, we feel this part would be good here. This person feels good here. Let's just plug this in there and there. And again, because we just went with the flow and not tried to make it something else, it worked truly perfectly. Like the setup was just great of the way it built and then the way it came down and all of that. You know what I mean?
Well, I really am impressed with this. Is something I've always tried to learn. And I think with working with the two of you, especially, one of the things we mastered together was when something went wrong, it was, well, that probably means we're supposed to do this then. And we just took it as a sign that we were now nudged in a better direction rather than a, oh no, we're failures. Because there was never a moment for me, at least, where I was like, oh no, this is a failure. It's just not going to happen. It was like a, no, there's something better. And it was totally that this or something better the entire process, which was amazing. And I'm carrying that into other portions of my life as well, where it's like, if it doesn't happen, it's okay, because there is something better and I can adapt and roll with it.
Yeah. I will say too, we did some like I'm gonna call them industry leading things that I have not seen done before at any spiritual conference. Between the Phasma box situation, the way that we did the workshop vendor fair portion was also very, very unique and gave people a lot of option to like understand themselves and each other. But then the speed read event,
Mhm.
that was, first of all, I've never done speed readings that way ever. It was like speed dating, but with reading.
Yep.
But the people we had as readers were so good. So good.
Knew and hoped it would happen, but it did. And this is what makes it even cooler, where the people would sit with one of the readers and they'd sit with the next one and get validation on the last one and expand on it, and then sit with the other one and get validation on the last one and expand on it. And what an incredible experience to be able to get so much proof to what you're being told over and over with different mediums and formats. So cool.
And another shout out to the readers too, and to the three of us as well, because I had never done a speed read event like that. Typically, when I do readings, they're not in front of the person. Like I've got my comfy tent and I've got like my various things that make me feel comfy and good and that kind of thing. And I know for so many there, maybe even every one of the readers, like this was really going outside of our comfort zone, but everybody came about it with, I will say, like excited nerves. It wasn't like, oh, nerves, I'm going to shut down. But like also, I feel like all the readers were there to support one another and lift each other up. And we were all very curious about each other. We now have the group chat where we're just like, hey, I'm not as familiar with that. Can I learn from you? Would you like to learn from me? Can we trade some kind of learning opportunity? And I think that extended as well into different people who came. So many numbers were exchanged and so many people were talking to each other, because even though we may not always be able to see each other physically because of the internet, the modern age, we can connect with people of like-mindedness and who are grounded in their practice in order to grow in a very supportive way. So all of that was so cool to see. Like, truly, my favorite thing was to see people meeting people, because that is something I'm so passionate about. That's why I put myself out there the way that I do, because I want people to meet people, to feel less afraid, to feel more grounded, to feel supported, and to feel empowered to raise each other up, because life shouldn't have to be the competition that it feels like sometimes. We can support one another so it's not.
Yeah, I agree. And I will say one of the cool things about the readers too is we really were intentional on making sure that no one's reading style was the same. So that every person, because each person got essentially 3 readings, each VIP attendee got 3 readings. And each of those 3 readings was drastically different styles than the other one. And we made sure that the readers that we chose fit into that. So like we had Rebecca doing lithiomancy. So you're grabbing like stones and these types of things. And then Krista's doing astrology, and I'm doing like my let's talk to your guides really quick and pull all your blocks. And then Rebecca Jane, who we had on the podcast a little while ago, was talking about soul types. And then I had Camden on the other side of me who was pulling runes. And then we had someone doing animal spirit like types. And then we had Catherine doing just like straight chaos reads about like the deepest part of who you are, just being like, bam, there's this. And we had Matt doing terror, like it was just, and Krista doing not a different Krista, Krista C doing like emotion code. Like it was all different and unique. And the way people ended up getting divided up wasn't, we didn't plan and be like, this person should go here, this person should go here. It was very much just like a divine divide of being like, here, this is your number. Now you get a reading in this group, basically. And everyone seemed to get exactly what they needed from the 3 readers that they got, which is again that like validation of divine timing, which was just really cool to see.
Yeah. One of the things I think this gathering really accomplished, that was an unintentional thing that we said from the very beginning. It was a sacred spaces gathering. And I think the most successful piece of it was not a single person was there to overshadow someone else. Not a single person was there to be seen and like push other people out of the way. Everyone was there to hold space for each other. And in that, everybody got seen. And I think it really showed. And I really appreciate that, not only from the people who participated in making the gathering happen, but from the people who attended and held space for the other attendees as well.
I agree. I cried a lot.
Yeah. Good tears though. And okay, I speaking of good tears, I want to mention what happened during Goddess Portal, which is what Annette calls her business. The Goddess, yes, Goddess Portal coaching, yes. So it was really striking when we were doing something called a swamp, and people felt so seen for what they were saying. And it's not that you say a lot, it's that you say exactly what you need to say, and you're simply acknowledged by that. And it was striking the amount of people afterwards who had a safe emotional reaction. And of course, after part of the process is you dance after that and you build yourself up. For so many people who are regularly checking in on their spiritual health and making sure that they have flow and they're cleansed, and they also have the mental health aspect of it. So many people also came back after that experience and they were just like, wow, I do a lot of work on myself. I didn't know that I needed that. And now I have that, and I can use that as part of my tools to do even better and be even better. And on top of that, now people have a trusted person that they can go to in order to share that experience in a safe space. So that once again, we don't have to hold on to anything that we don't need to hold on to anymore. which I think that's magic. That's magic to me.
Mhm. Yeah. That was huge. And there was people in the gathering too that you could tell for the first time ever they felt that vulnerable space to just be seen by peers because of Annette's, like the way Annette led that. And it was just really, really powerful to witness that release and space. And honestly, we just felt lucky. Like, we just felt so lucky to hold that energy and just to get to be there and to meet all the wonderful people who came. Like, so many people were just so excited to talk, and I was so excited to talk to all of them. And I know you guys felt the same. And that was also just really neat because, I mean, we're also isolated in our little respective rectangles across the world. And like, it's cool to not do that,
Mhm.
which was fun.
Oh, I was gonna say a side note. Do we even mention the amount of people who just found themselves in a safe astral space during the singing bowls with Mama Luna?
Yeah. Yeah.
So many.
I was so tired by that point. I sat down and was like yeeted into astral without my choosing almost immediately. And I was like, whatever, I guess this is what I'm doing now. And just hung out doing stuff up there. And it was cool. It was really cool. And honestly, it was really interesting coming back after the singing bowls because then we just kind of closed it out and you could see everybody was just slowly sinking back into their body. And then we did like a little like meet and greet for everyone after the fact. Like if you wanted to come like say hi and like hang out with us for a second and get pictures or whatever you wanted to do. And it was cool to like put people back into their body with that experience too, because so many people just like astral on accident.
Yeah, I was glad I was sitting on the floor for that one because I would have been all over a chair. So
I was just thinking, I was sitting on the floor for that, but also Astro Me was like, I'm gonna walk over. Like, I didn't go to another place. I stayed there for whatever reason. I was just like looking at folks and being like, this is cool.
Fair, very fair.
Looking
I
at
will say,
spirit folks, I should say. I was
yeah,
just like, look at all these cool people. This is really great.
I do think it was really cool too because Catherine had a lot of people that were very interested in paranormal investigation arrive and come too. And Rebecca pointed this out kind of early on in the conference that oftentimes paranormal investigation is not featured at spiritual conventions and conferences because oftentimes paranormal investigation is there to disprove or to, demonize ghosts, etc. And to have that like high vibe represented was really cool. And to see how people responded to that, even people who weren't necessarily originally interested in paranormal investigation, getting exposed to it in a healthy way that didn't make them feel like some ghost was going to grab them and pull them into darkness or something if they went and did that. I just want to do a call out and shout out on that because it was so unique and beautiful to have Catherine speak to that and have people be so inspired and like watch the inspiration of being like, see, we can include a whole bunch of different spiritual outlooks in the same place and have it be really helpful.
Yeah, that's something that I'm obviously passionate about, being the Rebecca the Ghost Guide person here. And something else, what I loved with that inspiration that was happening was, and I keep saying the word safe, but I say that because unfortunately in many places that's hard to find. And I know for many gatherings and conferences of a spiritual nature, people go there because they want to feel seen, they want to feel safe. And I'm just so grateful that that's exactly what we did. And
Mhm.
for the paranormal investigation aspect of it, a lot of mediums don't feel safe because they're with a team that is trying to disprove whatever they're doing, which is so hard. Like, that's why I made my own paranormal investigation team, or I go out with different kinds of teams, the ones you wouldn't typically see on larger form networks, for example. And that's part of what I talked about on my speaker series. But the coolest thing, though, there was a bit of inspiration as well. Some people who were a part of Catherine's, what's called the Boo Crew on TikTok, they went out with Catherine after the con had ended, and they went out to Hollywood, and they had their own kind of paranormal investigation time, which inspired us to think, like, for the next gatherings down the road, ways that we can do smaller groups so that you really get the experience of what we're talking about rather than just listening to how we got that experience on our own.
Yeah. Hollywood's a cemetery for those who are unfamiliar. It's a big ass cemetery in Richmond. We actually went exploring there too, and we followed the fannies, which is truly what we did. There will be a YouTube video about it, so stay tuned. But we basically got led around by a ghost, but there is some energy there. So for Theron to get to take, or Catherine to take people out there, was really, really cool for a lot of people. Also, I just want to point out my dog just figured out he can lay under my desk for the first time. So he decided to, he's not small, he's like 75 pounds, but he just decided to crawl under my desk and lay on my feet for this conversation for the first time, literally ever. He's usually right behind me. So I just wanted to point that.
I watched that happen and I was like, Callum's here. Wow, buddy.
Bloody. He's the best. Yes, you are. He
Confirmed.
looked at me like, what? Oh, yeah. So here's a question. Well, here's a couple different things. One, I also just love that we got to hang out together in person because, and I think
Yes.
people sometimes don't realize that, but like we're also friends, and we don't get to ever see each other in person. And so it was really cool to get to hang out with you guys. I love you, and it was awesome. We got to like spend time together. And that was really, really special. And I want to point that out too. As part of the reason we do the work that we do is because we also wanted more spiritually inclined friends. Like that's important to us. And even the people that we hung out with outside of just the three of us it was really cool to get to just be on that level and spend time with people in that space. So like thank you guys for being awesome and hanging out with me.
Yeah, likewise too. And I think, well, and I if I'm understanding correctly, you and KristaLyn also met each other through the internet initially.
Yep.
And
It was a
that's really,
program.
yeah, that's all of our experience here. And I think when you find super cool people, who like really lift you up, like you want to encourage other people to find their people too. And we have these platforms where we have the opportunity to bring people together because we know what it's like to be brought together, to finally be together. It was the first time, y'all, it was the first time that I was in the same physical space as KristaLyn and Emily. And that was so cool. We went thrift shopping together. Like that was so much fun. And then we just had the rest of the week.
We did. We went thrift shopping. We had boba. I had vegan chicken drumsticks. Rebecca and
I mean, I didn't eat them, but I will talk about new vegan all day long.
yeah, so it was really cool. And that was a huge takeaway for me is just like getting to spend like friend time. It was really nice.
Well,
Um
of the highest caliber, because I've never been around at least more than one person at a time where you're allowed to be fully yourself. Like I believe, especially some of the nights where we were just hanging out at the B&B, we weren't our like earthy kind of selves. We were fully in higher self mode. And it was just higher selves talking to higher selves. And that was a really nice feeling that
So
I've,
cool.
yeah. And to be around people who create that space and allow that space and anchor it enough for it's possible. Huge. Someone asked me what was my favorite part, and honestly, it was some of the time where we got to just be fully us without having to like tailor this or make that tolerable or palatable or whatever. It was just all us.
yeah. And I think our spirit folks also responded to that pretty significantly. The amount of interactions that like my guides, etc., had with like Rebecca's guides, etc., or Theron's guide, like it was just like this very interesting space of existing in our physical selves and kind of as our higher selves, no filtered. This is just the honest truth. And then also simultaneously listening to like 6 different background conversations that were happening at the same time between like our spirit people. It was a really it was really neat. It was really cool. We got a lot of compounding validation, a lot of which I'm still exploring. And I know you guys are too, as far as like whoa, what does this mean for this? Or maybe that's how that builds off of that, or all these different things. And that is part of the fun too, is yes, we came and we got to be friends and do that. And also it gave us more questions to follow and more things to channel on and more astral to do and stuff like that.
Well, and some of that even came from the attendees.
Mhm.
There's an attendee that came up to you during the meet and greet and said something about perceiving our energies that validated something Matt had said to me. and my phone just went off, that validated something Matt had said to me a couple nights before that really still has me thinking, because of something Rebecca with the soul types had said to me before. And like all of the stuff, that the validation soul level that we were able to get just from everybody being there. It was really more like a circle than anything.
Yeah. I think too, during the Q&A panel, this is when I realized that I was like, for realsies doing this. We talked about it afterwards.
The second day, almost all the way to the end, you realized you were for realsy doing this. Love that, Rebecca.
not like that much, but like, so when I talk, or okay, in consultations, I know this for a fact because, you know, I could get in the zone and I do what's called channel talking, where basically I talk until I can't. Like, I talk until there's just nothing there anymore. And it's the same thing that one would do with channel writing, for example, where you just write until you can't write anymore. And we talked about the clicking moment, and this happened when we were all introducing ourselves, that first part too, where like I was kind of like, yeah, I'm so excited to be here, and then like handed the mic towards the end and I just said something. I don't even remember what I said, but then afterwards I was like, oh, I guess that was the thing that was waiting from up here to come down to here. The same thing happened with paneling, where like we were all answering this question and then I would go and then I would just sort of like stop talking and go, yes. And it was actually really validating afterwards when we were doing that kind of meet and greet, the amount of people who came up and they said that I had said a very specific phrase that had been on their mind, or something just very pointed of something that they needed to hear because they were already thinking about it, or that kind of thing. And that was kind of like bing moment for me. That was a light bulb of like, I did the thing. I connected with the energy, just said this stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you did. It was funny too, because I mean, I was sitting right next to you on that panel, and then Krista was right next to me. And so we were watching you. And it was funny to see when you switched from speaking as Rebecca to channeling as Rebecca, because you could not only see it because we can see like energy and sense that, it would be like, your face goes like this, and then your face changes and you go into channeling mode and it just starts coming out like this. And then you're like, ah, and then everyone claps, and you're like, what did I say?
What happened? Yeah.
It was also, I did get an extra bump from Hermes because he was also very close by at that time, and I felt him around, and I was like, cool, cool, cool. And then there was a moment where I was like, I just, thank you, sir. Thank you. That's great.
Like, I guess I'm doing this now. It was really cool. I will say, why don't we all share like our biggest takeaways and then like wrap that up with that? Does that sound cool?
Yeah.
Okay.
You go first.
Thanks. Honestly, I think the biggest takeaway is how freaking excited I am to do it again. And that is something huge. I've done a lot of events in my life, so many events, and usually at the end, especially if you're the person working them or organize them, like even if it was a good event, you're like, okay, all right, well next time I can fix this and blah 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 blah, and like you make that list instead of being like, I'm so excited to do this again. Like that's not typically the feeling when you're done doing an event. You might be stoked that you got to speak and that was cool and you want to speak again, but like the whole event, there's usually something that like snags or is heavier or just like not as simple. And I was in Richmond for 2 weeks. Like I was there a long time because we also did a writing retreat beforehand. And when I was leaving, yes, I missed my kids and yes, I wanted to come home and I did want to see them and all of those sorts of things. But I was just like, I'm so excited for when we get to do this again and craft this magic again and see all these people again and help each other grow. Like I can't even fathom how cool and big this is going to grow into, but that was a huge takeaway for me, as well as the like, hey, I loved us hanging out at the B&B and talking and being our authentic selves together. That was just amazing. But that was, I think, probably my biggest takeaway of how special it is to have completed this event and want to do another one. I think that's really cool.
Yeah. I think, yeah. My biggest was my faith in humanity. Being able to see that many people being that kind and loving and magical, and again, holding space for each other, and just being absolutely the highest definition of compassion, unconditional love for strangers and for friends, and making connections and investing in themselves and supporting each other. Just the fact that like there is so much goodness out there, and we got to gather it in a space for a weekend and witness it in all of its individual expressions from every person that showed up. And just watching that makes me believe that we can heal the entire world, just one person at a time, with all of us. And I hope everybody goes home feeling that empowered and inspired so that they know that they are the lights that are going to light up everything else.
Yeah.
These are so beautiful. Okay, yes.
Mhm.
I am building off of that as well, I think. So being an internet person, a public figure, that sort of thing, also like putting my personal parts of my personal life online has been great for the most part. And I feel very honored that it has turned out so well as it has. Though this past year in particular, I did run into a lot of stuff from the internet and people who were not so great. And it was troubling to me on how to continue and how to move forward. Because when you've been hurt, it's hard to just get up and do something again, or even when it's trying something different, trying that again. And one thing that was so helpful was both of you, KristaLyn, Emily, you and your way of seeing me and supporting me, and our meetings and the mutual respect that happened and the empowerment that happened. There were days, where I popped on the meeting and I was like, I'm having a really hard time, but I'm here. And having that energy flow was part of the reason why I could continue doing this, even though I don't even know if I can even say it was my idea, because like we're still trying to figure out like how many beings got together to give me that one ping that one day. Who knows? Maybe we'll find out one day. Though to do that and to feel so supported by the two of you, by our speakers, by our readers, our vendors, our volunteers, I felt so safe, which is priceless to me. And to also be able to share that space with other people who I didn't know. And all of them came in with this beautiful attitude. And like, I'm going to say beautiful attitude on how to be there and how to support one another and how to lift each other up. And it's really changed my perspective to look forward to the future and look forward to what can work and what can be, rather than focus on things from my past that did not work out the way that I initially wanted them to. So when I think of this kind of magic, I think of how healing it has been for truly my soul. So thanks everybody for being involved. I don't know if I'll ever be able to truly state how much all of this means to me, and that things are going so well and we have things we want to move forward to in the future.
I second that completely.
I third that, and I believe that is a unanimous yes then.
I also just want to give Rebecca some credit real quick. You're brave as shit. The amount of stuff that you put on the internet is like, you're brave, and you deserve accolades for that because it's hard. Also, I got to read Rebecca's book, which is not ready yet, so no one else can read it just yet, but it's so good, and I can't wait for everyone else to read it because you deserve that hype too. It's awesome.
I know, I'm stoked. I heard just a little bit about it because Em couldn't contain herself. So I know nothing about plot or anything like that. Don't worry, nothing's been spoiled except the fact that I should be very excited. So I am.
And that Rebecca freaking book one me, and I was so mad. Just like reading along, grooving, moving, end of part one. The fuck? I was so upset. Which just means it's a good book.
Well, thank you for that acknowledgement. And I wrote the way that I was able to get that together and really move it forward was because of Forgotten Storytellers. So this is all a circle. And of course, both of you will get a copy of my book when it is ready. And I'm grateful that you had such a wonderful time reading it.
I just have to say that was interesting too. It was the first time that we went to the Ireland trip, and I think we had 3 different forgot storyteller cohorts represented in the Ireland trip. But this, I think we had 5. I'm pretty sure we had 5 different cohorts represented by at least one person, and that was a really cool experience to be like, wow, look at all these people who wrote books. Like that's cool to be in a room with that. So it
And they
was.
got
Thank.
to share experiences. And do you mind if I share this? We can cut this out if not. But the fact that I was talking to a therapist about our program, and she was saying how helpful it is to witness someone go through that process. Someone from our program had actually talked to her about it as well, and she was saying, like, basically our conference and our program, they are therapist approved because we haven't mentioned this yet, we emphasized mental health as part of spiritual health and physical health as part of spiritual health, and we didn't
Yeah.
let that ball drop all weekend. And I think that that was really important, and I'm very proud of us for that, because magic is part of everyday life and everyday life is magic. So it was good to really show how that can work.
I agree. Well, wonderful. Thank you to everyone who came, or everyone who thought about coming, or everyone who sent some energy our way. Or if you want to watch the speeches and listen to the Phasma Box recordings, those will be available to purchase as like an online option here in the next couple weeks. So just pay attention to that. We'll probably send out a mass email once it is like, hey, you can grab these recordings, because that is going to happen. We just have to make them pretty first, because they're slightly messy at this point in time. So we're going to make it pretty. And then we'll get them out. But literally in the next couple of weeks. So if you want to experience, and honestly, the amount of stuff that I think everyone learned from this talks was really impactful. I know I learned stuff from you all and from Catherine and from Annette, and I think it's really powerful as far as a learning tool for growing your spiritual self and your next step. And so if you want that, that will be available. But also just like thank you guys. Thank you guys for helping us do this. Thank you for listening to us talk and listening to our areas of expertise and providing us a way to make this possibility. It's cool. Thank you. So, all right. Shall we end this?
Anybody who was at the conference, this is not going to be as graceful as it was there, but we're going to give it a shot. Rebecca, are you in?
I'm in. I'm for this.
Okay, here we go. We hope that you take all of this energy and you 2, 3.
Make some magic.
Go make
Go
some
make some
magic.
magic.
Oh God.
That
It was so beautiful.
our minds run out. A single one of us said it at the same time.
No.
No, we did not. No, we did not. But and it will be perfect. Okay,
We had to just have this come down, so it's okay.